All right, hello everyone. How are things? Good? Very good. No? Okay. So, today's class we are going to do two things. First one, we are going to look at something important, which is how to submit an app to the App Store. And then after that, we are going to look at how to use maps in your app. How to create an app that uses the map kit. Map kit is the framework for using maps. It's like an app like Uber or stuff like that where you see a map. So you will learn how to develop that and work with that. So what is this deal with submitting an iOS app to the App Store? So you have finished a brand new app and you want other people to use it, not just run it on your simulator. The only way to do that on an iPhone is to publish it to the App Store. Pretty much the only way. So any app that you want others to use, you have to submit to the Apple App Store, and they have a process. They review it and they check for a bunch of things, and then they decide whether your app should be shown to others or not. That's what we are going to look at, and believe it or not, so far we have already created 5 fully functional apps of different complexity levels in this course so far. Some of them took very long, like the tic-tac-toe took us 4 classes to finish. Calculator was 2 classes, some were only 1 class. So total 5. Can you think of all 5?
Yeah.
Yes?
Analog,
Yes.
calculator,
Yes.
tic-tac-toe,
The exam, you did one in the exam and one last week.
and yes,
The translation. Would you please close the door, Peter? So that's, so it's not that difficult. You can come up with an idea, you can create an app, and you can put it on the App Store. So let's find out what is the process. How do we get this app or any app in front of the rest of the world? So the main requirement, the biggest requirement is to have what is called an Apple Developer ID. They have a developer program, and you register in it just like if you have an iTunes account, Apple Store. If you download something on your iPhone, close the door. So that Apple Developer ID costs money, and these are annual fees. I forgot to mention it there. So for an individual, it costs $99. And in Canada, there is HST on top of that. And in Canadian dollars, it's 139 plus taxes. If you work in a team, you want all the members to have access to that, then you need to pay 400 Canadian dollars plus HST. Now, unfortunately, Apple does not have any educational pricing on this. So we cannot actually, I would have liked that all of you have an account, go in there, submit one of your apps, make Apple work for its money. But that's not going to happen unless you get an account. So why? Why this? Why do they have this? Because each app that goes on the App Store, it has a security certificate. Apple knows that it came from such and such person who has already confirmed their identity, etc., by paying that $99. So that certificate is used to sign your app, and when it's installed on the user's device, this creates a security mechanism. So malicious apps cannot be passed around easily. So that's why it is that. And when we are developing the app running on the simulator, it generates certificates, etc., whatever the simulator needs, and it's contained, it's on that machine. So that has a slightly different process than actual distribution. Now it's also possible if you have an iPhone, an iPad, or your friends, your siblings, brothers, sisters, they have iPhones, and you want them to test your app, you can actually register them in your Apple developer account, and they will be able to view those apps even when they are not published. They will be able to download and install. So the thing with this is that because we don't have an Apple ID for the whole class, it is not possible to actually for you to log in and play around with that interface. Apple does not make it available without that 99 bucks. So what we will do is we will watch an overview of how this thing is done through a YouTube video. It's a very nice video. The guy explains everything, all the steps from from the beginning, from creating an app all the way to how to create an Apple developer account, how to submit an app, what information you need to provide along the way, etc. And this is a 20-minute video, so we'll watch it now. And at some points, I may pause it and add some things about the video. If you have any questions during the video, you can just raise your hand. We'll pause the video, and if something is not clear, it's too fast, or anything like that, we'll address it right then and there. Okay, so basically, these are the steps. I'll just recap it. Let's say you have an app created. What you do is first thing you go and register for a developer ID. You pay them the fees, etc. You download the provisioning profiles and you can install them in Xcode just by clicking on what you downloaded. And then within Xcode, you go in and you add your account. The account that you just obtained the developer ID for. Let's open an old app so I can show you this. So add account. You can add an account from here, and there are other places within Xcode which will tell you, and these are the signing certificates, etc., all that whatever is needed. So you add that account, and then what you do is once your app is running and you are happy with it, and you have done things like you have added, we did this app last time, we added a flag, but the app icon itself, this asset set here, this is empty, this has got no icons. This is the icon that is shown on the phone for your app. So for example, if your app is designed for the iPhone and iPhone of certain specifications, you need at least those icons here. If your app is universal, supposed to work on all iPhones and iPads, you need each and every one of these. So the same icon, you will generate it in different sizes using a Photoshop or whatever tool you use to resize images, including one for the App Store. This is what is shown to the public before they download your app. So once you've done all of this, you can submit. I want to show you a couple of other things. So in this general tab, so this is the name of the app we have chosen. Bundle identifier, we have just been going with the initials and the name of the app, but he was using the reversed domain configuration here. You can specify whether your phone is supposed to work on both iPhone and iPad or just one of them. Some apps are designed only for the tablet or only for the phone. Like for example, Uber is an app that won't work on your tablet, required. Or WhatsApp. Uber may work, but WhatsApp is something that is linked to a phone. If you install it on, it won't probably be, you won't even be able to install it on an iPad because it's not supported. You can choose what orientations of the device your app works in. So for example, for the tic-tac-toe, what orientations would we choose? Only portrait, because our interface does not, it does not adapt to landscape. So you would basically uncheck these two. before submitting it. So all those things you will take care of. App icon, this is the name of the assets. So for example, here it's called app icon. I don't have to call it that. I could rename it. I could create several versions of it, and just to test which one looks the best, I can just keep choosing another one, app icon 2, app icon 3. Same thing with launch screen. It's just happens to be called launch screen here, launch screen dot storyboard. I can call it anything as long as I go and set it here. And then I can have multiple versions. If I'm testing, I'm asking for feedback. So I don't have to remove one and add another one. I can keep all of them and then do the testing like that. There's one other thing that is quite important you should know is deployment target. iOS deployment target. Right now it is set as 13.2, which is the latest version of iOS. But if you look through the list, you will find lots of previous versions. So when you say that your deployment target is 13.2, anybody who is running 13.1, 13.0 or before will not even see your app on the App Store, which is a bad thing. Because unless you are using features that were introduced in 13.2 and are critical to your app, you will be missing out on a bunch of people who have not updated their operating system, don't want to update, or maybe their devices are older and iOS 13.2 is not even supported anymore. So you want to go back as far back as possible within the functionality of your app. If your app is very basic, for example, the Hello World app or Tic Tac Toe, all of this should work even with 8.0. So you want to go down to 8.0, and so that people with very old devices will also be able to install your app. Okay. One other thing I wanted to show was, so in here in the developer interface, when you are in your app,
though, that's the process.
So basically you've uploaded your app, you've got a name, you can enter all these optional details. Then within here you have this section called pricing and availability, which the guy didn't cover. What it is you can specify which countries in the world your app will be shown to. So if your app is limited to, let's say it's an app that it's only for Canadians, it's only to be shown in Canada, you can go in and select Canada. The rest of the world won't even see it. And similarly, and by default, it's shown to everybody, so you don't have to do anything. And pricing is where you can say how much it costs for somebody to download, to install your app. By default, it is 0. You can choose, if your app is very valuable, you can say, okay, $5, $10, and you hope that you have millions of downloads and don't have to do anything else. So that is where you go for pricing. How many of you have heard of something called in-app purchases?
We can purchase
Purchase things inside the app. So basically, let's say typically a lot of games have this. You can buy goodies in the game. You can buy, you're stuck at some point and you can buy some help, buy food, buy gold bars or whatever it is they sell, and then use them in it. So those are in-app purchases. They'll usually be $1, $2, whatever they want to charge for it. So that part is there under features. So once you have uploaded your app, you go into the features and you specify what in-app purchases your app allows. It can be a recurring purchase. Let's say you have a service, newspaper. You want to charge subscription, monthly, weekly, whatever. You can specify all of that. And by doing that, what happens is a purchase is created inside the App Store. App Store keeps track of it. And within your app, you go and say that these are the purchases that are available from the App Store, but you don't specify the price in your app code. Your app code only has the purchase ID. Like in-app purchase number 1, in-app purchase number 2. What that does is that gives you the ability to change the price later on. Let's say your app has been installed by 1 million people. and you now want to charge instead of $3, you want to charge $5 for the in-app purchase. Just go into your Apple developer interface and change from $3 to $5 and you're done. So whoever, whenever the next time they open and they want to buy, the price will automatically. They don't have to reinstall your app. So that's the mechanism in general. Any question? Yeah.
Can you make money like by developing a good app and publish on the App Store?
Very good question. Can we make money by publishing a good app on the App Store? Yes. There are so many companies whose businesses exist only because of the phones, because of the apps like WhatsApp, Uber, all the food delivery now, the restaurant delivery companies. There are so many. The games, I'm sure many of you have seen games, if not played Candy Crush, and I don't know so many names, but huh? What was that? Teen Patti. Oh, that's an Indian game, poker, I suppose, Indian poker. So these are supposedly, so it is possible you can do that.
But like I have also an opinion to make an app, but is it easy to collaborate with a restaurant or like the Uber? Like they skip the dishes. It's a very popular app in Canada. What they do is they collaborate with the restaurant, to increase their sales and deliver to the people. But if I want to collaborate with the restaurant, then I have to make like my question is, do I have to pay them?
So that's now you're talking about the business model. So that is something you have to think separately completely. It's different from the technology of the app, how your app is going to make money, who your partners are going to be, all of that is separate.
But like the idea I have that I can secure, is it possible to, just, you can say copyright kind of something? Because
So if your app is unique,
yeah,
your software code is a copyright, your own copyright. Every time you create a file in Xcode, it says at the top, copyright Bikramjit Singh, right? So that is there. But if it's an easy idea, somebody can replicate. Right? So there are other things that I want to cover. Let's look at the second part, app review. So what happens is when you have gone through the whole process, like we watched in the video, you have submitted your app to Apple for review. At first, before you can even submit, it is checked by programs automatically for things like the guy ran into, he didn't have an app icon. So once all of those checks are through, your app will go to a human being for review. So that person's job is to install your app on a device, one or two devices, whatever their standard is, and run it and see the description and see what the app is doing. It's the same. Those kind of things. So it's possible that your app will get accepted the very first time you submit, and good, celebrate. Very often, what will happen is it will come back with some feedback. This happened, last semester in the same course. There was a guy who was working, sort of creating an app for a radio station. So the radio station had asked him to create an app which will play just their radio station. So all that app was a big play button. So you install that app, you run it, you get a play button, you touch the play, and it streams the radio station onto your phone. So he submitted it, and it got rejected, and he was really sad. So he wrote to me saying this and this happened. They are saying that the app doesn't run, doesn't do this. And these are the things that you want to look for, and pretty much this is the advice I gave him. That first of all, this is very common. Second, you need to test your app. If it requires internet, you test it on Wi-Fi, you test it on data. Make sure it's working on both. And test it on different devices. If your app is compatible with iPad and iPhone, you test it on whatever you can get your hands on. Whatever you cannot, it's okay. And if you find that your testing is not, you're not able to reproduce the problems they were saying, and in this guy's case, they said that the play button doesn't do anything. He could, so for him, it always worked. So he just wrote back saying that this is the proof. He made a video and sent it to them and all that, and they accepted it. So his radio station player is there on the App Store. If you want, I will tell you the name and you can download it and see what he did. So this is the process, and you will go through this. And in this process, what will also happen is, uh, where were we? So you will provide all of this information, and you will upload at some point. You will be required to upload your screenshots. So this video is a few months old. Apple keeps releasing new versions of phones every 6 months or so, or every year, if not every 6 months. So whatever they are requiring, those screenshots you need, it doesn't mean you need to own those devices. So if it says iPhone 5.8 inch display, that might be the iPhone 10. You don't need to own it. You can run it in the simulator, take a screenshot and submit. For iPad as well, you don't need to buy all of those devices to be able to submit the screenshot. So that's one other thing you need to know. Okay, so that's that part. Any questions about this? Okay, good. So test flight. What is test flight? So test flight is an app. It's itself an app which allows you to download other apps which are still in beta testing. So somebody, let's say you have an app, you can release your app in test flight mode. And if you go here, let's look at this again. There is a tab called test flight. So you can enable test flight for your app. So even though you're not submitting it to Apple for review, you're saying this is the app that I want other people to test. So you enable test flight, and then what happens? All these people, see, you can invite up to 10,000 testers using just their email addresses or by sharing a public link. So if you have a blog, you have a website, you got lots of people who visit, you want them to test your app, you just put a link there. So anybody who is using an iPhone, iPad touches that link, they will install that app in their device through test flight. And they will be able to test it, give you feedback. Test flight has its own limitations also, just like if you were to use a Mac, if you have an iPhone and a Mac, you can connect the iPhone to the Mac and install whatever apps you have. Test flight and that, both of them will work with what is called development provisioning profile. So they have a limitation that those provisioning profiles expire after 7 days. So after 7 days, your app like that won't work. So Apple wants basically to always have apps going through the App Store. They don't want you to have another way. Like on Android, you can install any app, whatever you want. So Apple is very closed that way. So that is what test flight is. And I just wanted you to know about it. Okay. So that is the part about submissions to the App Store. Any questions? No questions?